Welcome to VUC 2019, Visions Under Construction. I faked myself out. I forgot it was short. Let's talk about Camellia World and some other events coming up. Camellia World is one of our favorites. It's May 6th to 8th. Clever idea of me to put that slide up because now I know what the date is. Berlin, Germany. What a terrific city that is, by the way, for eating, drinking, and conferencing. Other than that, let me just say hello to everybody, and then we'll turn it over to Michael, who's got some other news of conferences, including a couple other favorites. But first of all, the engineer for this train is Mr. Corrado Mela.
What do you mean, the engineer? So the one at the front?
Yeah, you're the engineer. You're the guy who runs into people if they jump onto the tracks, right?
Yeah, like the thing that is in front of the steam engine that is moving the cows away. Yeah. Okay.
If I'm the caboose, you're the. All right, wait a minute. Should probably put my camera on as well. And next in line in the profile area is Hank. Hank is probably for now the most experienced Diaspora user and developer. How you doing?
On the panel.
Oh, that's what I meant. Oh, and look, I wonder if this is that's the real name of the secret guy. Here he is. Let's see. Who do we have here? Antoine.
Yeah.
You're Fla something?
Exactly.
Okay. You have a light behind you. So if you could.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll try to arrange that.
Okay. And we're going to have some other news. Let's get to Jay Carpenter, who's in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Jay.
Hello, all. Great to be here today.
We could not do this without Michael Graves, partner since, 2009? ZipDX 20901.
About that. Let's say I have a little time on my hands, I guess.
Yeah,
so, cons. I'm a con man today because this week broke a bunch of news about things. And so I'm going to do them in chronological order. And I'm actually going to skip the earliest one, which is IT Expo, which is not a con. So the call for papers came out for ClueCon, or not ClueCon, ComCon, and the dates have been set. So our friend Dan off in the UK, this will be his second annual. And the website is up, and there's a call for papers, and I am going to scratch my head and try and come up with one because this seems to be a one-of-a-kind conference on communications and the web and what have you. And so it's moved back in the year, though. It's going to be the 7th to the 11th of July. After that comes ClueCon, which is in Chicago, and that would be the Free Switch Community Conference, which I've been to the last couple of years. Now it'll be a little bit different because now we have the whole signal wire thing going on. So they have a call for papers out as well, and basically be looking to book travel for that soon. And then there's another brand new conference, and this one is in beautiful Naples, Italy. This will be the first ever JanusCon, plus they're calling it VoIP on the Beach. Now, Janus is the what do you call it? Media server engine that done by Lorenzo Mignero and group out of the university there in Naples, and they are top of that game for that part of the world, and also just generally WebRTC gurus. So that if you're in Europe or if you would fancy a trip to Naples, that's late in September, 23rd to 25th in Napoli. So hey, 3 great cons.
I have a con man t-shirt. I wish I would have known that you were going to use that expression. I could have put it on. Instead, I've got my VUC.me hoodie. All right.
We should get Lorenzo and the Janus team to come pay us a visit.
Absolutely. They can even use the V word. But today it's the D word. We're going to double D. We're going to be talking about Diaspora. And of course, if I can find it.
Diaspora.
I shortened it for everybody so that we wouldn't take all day listening to that. All right. Well, Fla, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a perfect example of someone I've never met or seen. He is with us. We could do the whole thing in French, but I think then there'd be even fewer people who would understand.
Sure.
But if you have questions for him, make sure that you speak slowly enough so that he can get it and not too many weird idioms. By the way, you know Hank? You guys know each other?
Yeah.
Okay, so Hank is now a pillar member of the VUC, Visions Under Construction. And it's great to have him because he's doing a lot of things. Hank, would you like to talk a little bit about what you've done most recently with regard to Diaspora?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm mostly, well, let's see, I'm doing some development still. As I've said in a previous podcast, we did we made a lot of progress with the API at the end of last year. There's a whole bunch of new things I'd like to see and the community would like to see in some of the upcoming releases, which I'm looking forward to working on. And then along the lines, you need a lot of test equipment for that. So I've been going through and actually went through the process of, it wasn't on a dare per se, but someone had asked, what was the minimum requirement to run that? And I thought to myself, well, actually it was asked, can it run on a Raspberry Pi? And I didn't know. After I actually pulled it off on my own, I found out there's a whole community of people on Diaspora who have set these up on Raspberry Pis. They even have their own hashtag, PiPod. But yeah, I actually had spoken to Brad, one of the podmans. I forget which server he is, and he had set one up, and he actually was using it for some test servers and all of that. But he had put the database on another machine because it technically doesn't have enough memory. It only has about 1 gig of memory. Minimum requirements 1.5. But again, it was on a lark. It was to see how well it worked, and the performance was surprisingly good. Post render well, post pretty quickly, and this is run the entire stack, the database, Redis, the whole 9 yards, all on one little Raspberry Pi. Slowest thing was writing the blog post right now. The slowest thing was actually image manipulation. Turns out that that little ARM core can't really crunch through PNGs very fast. So if you upload, I accidentally uploaded a 1 megabyte PNG, and that took like 17 seconds to process. But otherwise, it actually was surprisingly agile, especially considering the smaller memory requirements. So that was good. Let's think about, well, somebody like me who's been on, hobbyists with all this stuff since the 80s. You say, it's only got about 1 gig of memory. When I had 16 megs in my first computer, and I got it up to 48K with the extension. And you're talking about maybe $700-800 in 1980 dollars. So think about how that converts over. Anyway, because we've got Fla with us, I'd like to switch over to him and get Fla, if we could get your story a little bit. How did you get started, and what is your involvement, and what other projects maybe did you work on before? You don't look that old, but you probably have done things before.
Yeah, about me. I joined the free software movement by joining the Mozilla Foundation. As a volunteer, I never been professionally involved with free software. My main interest was privacy, online privacy. I gave talk and speech about online tracking and what you can do to avoid. What are the mechanisms existing, like maybe the Lightbeam add-on for Firefox, which try to know the link between all the websites you are visiting. So I spent some time working on that, but Mozilla is really a big project with thousands of people. And I was looking for something smaller. And I had to do a choice because I don't have infinite time, unfortunately. And so I was asking myself which project I could join, and I picked Diaspora because as I wasn't able to work on everything, I thought that I could work on one project which will allow people to connect to each other, and those people will then be able to involve them in the place I don't have time to be. So that was the idea. I'm not sure I'm very clear. So if you don't understand something I'm saying, do not hesitate to interrupt me and ask me to repeat or find a different wording, because I'm not really familiar with English.
I should mention at this point too that when people want to look at the archived YouTube, there's auto-generated subtitles, and they're actually not bad. I was taking a look at what Hank was saying the other day, and it's translated actually pretty well. I was looking at the French translation precisely because somebody complained, but said they didn't understand, so the video and the podcast weren't useful. I'd like to get into transcripts someday too. Okay, do we have any questions anywhere? I don't see any questions on ZipDX. I mean on IRC. We have so many channels to monitor. It's impossible. So I don't know. My question would be about the roadmap, because there are really very few people contributing, right? Or did we go over this last week and found out that that was the opposite? I don't know. There's not a huge team working on this, though, is there, Fla?
No, it's not. We all are volunteer. So the thing about the roadmap is we don't want to promise something to someone. We don't want to say we will be able to deliver that feature at that time, because as we are not paid to work on the project, we deal with the priorities of our lives, and sometimes we work on Diaspora because we like it, and sometimes we don't have time to do that. So the idea is more like I want something to be done, then I start working on it, and it ships when it's ready. So there is no target date for a major release version. Mm-hmm. We do release a minor version every 6 weeks. So like the browsers are doing, with all the improvements which have been done during those 6 weeks. So it's not like we want that and we do it and then we ship when it's ready. It's more like we are shipping regularly. What's ready will come inside. If it's not ready, it will be in the next release.
I have a quick question too about the differences between pods. I'm going to guess that when a major release comes out, the time is variable between different pod admins, right? In other words, they implement that, they put that out when they have time or when they feel like it, right? So there could be weeks, maybe even months before a major release comes out, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah. So are you talking about the system administrators, or are you talking about the developer? Yeah.
The software updates. It must be variable when they get actually rolled out.
That's an interesting point, actually, because when we are doing federation protocol modifications, we have to be compatible during some time between two different versions. So, for example, the fifth Diaspora major version was using the old protocol, and SuperTux built a new one, very improved. This one was released in the sixth major version, but this version has to be able to speak the old protocol too, because most of the pod will still be in the 5th version. And so it's only when the 7th version was released that we dropped the support for the old protocol. So every podmin had the time of the whole 6th major release version to do the update, and that's usually 1 year. So plenty of time to upgrade.
Right. It's, I mean, I've been computing, like I said, since 1980, but it's way beyond me how the Federation aspects work, whether it's Diaspora, Mastodon, what's the one that everybody likes here? I can never remember the name of it. Riot, Matrix Protocol, Matrix. All these things connect, and completely beyond me. And I think that I'm probably much more experienced than most people who are using it, especially the people on, say, Pluspora, who came from Google Plus. And the average user's vision of how this stuff works is, well, limited would be a compliment. I mean, nobody knows how this stuff works. So they're asking for things that are not necessarily reasonable. But one reasonable request that keeps coming back is edit posts. What's your feeling on that? Editing the post.
Yeah, just before answering that question, I want to point a comparison which works very well to explain people what's a decentralized software. Because everybody, yeah, you don't need to know how it works to use it. But sometimes you face something you feel weird because you are in a decentralized environment. And the best comparison is the email. Everybody knows about the email. So when each time someone is asking me how Diaspora works, I take this example. So it's easier when people come from Facebook and they are like, I can't find my friend in just typing his name, I can't find my friend. Please tell me what I can do. And I explained that they have to enter the whole Diaspora ID. So not only the name, but also the @ and all the pod URL. I explained them that they are on a pod, like if you have a Gmail account, and then they are writing messages to people who are on another pod. So that's like writing an email to someone at yahoo.com, for example. And people know how emails work. So it's really easy to do that comparison. And most of the time, it's really accurate. That there is not something different than email. Like all the pods, all the servers have a domain, like email. The username looks like an email. Everything is really similar, so it's a good comparison, I think.
Well, it's also, I mean, one could also say, I don't know anything about how cars work. I mean, I knew a little, but don't know how to repair one, but I can certainly drive. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But email is a really good comparison, and it's true that you don't need to know how it works, but what's nice is to understand the limits, well, particularly with this project, because it's so low powered as far as development. I mean, if you're looking at coming from Google Plus, I don't know how many developers were on the team, but I interfaced with a lot of people privately that were touching on that. So there's got to be probably hundreds of people who were probably working on it, if maybe tens, at least dozens, you know. And so people were asking for features and features to be rolled out. Diaspora just has a relatively few people that are actually working on it, and they have other stuff to do in life. Whereas the Google people, they were paid to do this. So it's incredible that they didn't do a better job, actually. And the example that I mentioned today somewhere was that all this time, what is it, 6 years that Google Plus existed, and they still had manual markup of two, you know, italic and bold. You couldn't select it. There was no editor, in other words. And I wondered why there was no editor. And I always thought, well, maybe they just don't want to put that code in because they had all the other stupid suggested users and other code. So, I mean, the thing was bloated, but they couldn't find it in their hearts to put an editor in there to mark up. So anyway, long rant for nothing. But the point is, anyway, we do have, Jay's got a question on governance. So go ahead, Jay, and we'll see what happens from there.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm curious as to what the governance structure is like for the ecosystem. So, for example, let's say there's a dispute about a naming construct, or there's, you know, how do you decide what direction the development's going to go?
We had the Lumio. I don't know if you know Lumio software. It's an application which allows you to vote. So it's really, I think it came from like the the Occupy Wall Street movement or something like that. Well, the idea is to ask a topic and you can only answer yes, no, or block or abstain yourself. We used it inside the Diaspora project for, I don't know, maybe 4 years. Turns out we don't really need to. And we replaced it by discourse, which allow us to discuss and then agree or not on something. And we never really reached the point where the community was really divided around an issue. So I don't know. We mostly agree on what we want to do with Diaspora. So, but the idea is to vote on inside the core team, so people with right to push code on the repository.
So thank you for that answer. You know, in the decentralized realm, governance is a key point for innovation, in my view, because yeah, it works on a small scale to have voting and sort of general consensus and so forth. But when you get to a larger scale and when there's higher stakes on the table, as the network grows, that's when there's an incentive to game the system. So, you know, for example, civil attacks and voting and things like that. So I just wondered if, you know, I've got it that it's worked pretty well so far with sort of a general community consensus and so forth, but is there any talk of how do you scale this up and how do you mitigate the incentive to game the system like in a voting construct, if that makes sense?
The interesting point is the people who are building Diaspora are not the same than the one who are hosting it. So the core team of Diaspora doesn't sell anything, doesn't host anything. We do not have any public server where someone can register or anything. So the idea is like, if I do want something inside my Diaspora pod and you don't want this, then I will be able to modify the code and put it inside my server and everybody can decide. So to me, the software itself doesn't have that problem. If you want to do data mining, if you want to put ads and make Diaspora look very similar to Facebook, do it, go ahead, you can do it, and then you can host it on your server. And then if users want that, they will come, or if they don't want that, they will leave the server you're hosting and go elsewhere. So we don't have to all agree on what's Diaspora itself, as we can decide what we want to host. The only critical point is the protocol. The protocol has to be common to everybody. So this is the critical point. But the protocol itself is very neutral. I mean, it's just like saying, I'm sending a message, is not controlling anything itself. It's like, I don't know, if we do the SMTP again, or HTTP. Like if we do the email comparison once again, it's like SMTP, and maybe some email providers want the email to be encrypted, and they will force email to be encrypted. But if another email provider doesn't want that, you will not do it, and that's it. So mainly we didn't reach that point where the software itself, I don't know. I don't know if we will ever need to scale up, and not because of the users, the number of users. I mean, but just because, like, in decentralized world, these things are going differently. So it's not a group of people controlling the whole software. It's like, just do whatever you want. It's free software. You can host it, you can fork it, you can modify it, and that's it. That's the cool thing.
Yeah, we have Corrado has a question or comment for you. Corrado?
I just wanted to put something, like, because I didn't answer your question about editing. So,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So
I don't know your personal feeling about it, though.
Edition will come. Edition will come for sure. It is already part of the protocol, and but the UI has to be done, and it has to be done right. So we will probably do something like Discourse is doing, so with a mention that the post has been edited, and probably access to the history to be able to know the different version the post was. So this is quite a complicated feature. So it will not be there right now, as there is a lot of work to do, but it will come. Yeah.
Okay, great. Corrado has a question. I've got some questions afterwards, but Corrado.
Yes, hello, hi. A couple of questions. One that spawns from the question Jay made about governance. What I've experienced in many open source and community-led initiatives, like the initial Android platform, is fragmentation, because sometimes there are branches and trees and of code that verge in different directions. Governance should also try to take care of that to avoid branching out and having different flavors of the pod going with different functions that are probably not compatible, or etc. What I wholeheartedly suggest is to stick with the protocol and encode the protocol using RFCs deposited with the IETF, like the SIP protocol, like anything that is encoded pragmatically and is peer reviewed, and so you have a solid base where to limit the initiative of someone that wants to create something new, a new function that requires a new functionality. Sorry, that requires a new function in the protocol. So to me, that is an important part. So when you have a repository of RFCs that define the protocol, that then is the foundation for spreading all the updates and changes and upgrades throughout the ecosystem. If you don't encode that, not strictly but precisely, you risk fragmentation, and that is really bad for a project that is community-led.
Well, the whole documentation of the protocol already is available on GitHub. There is an implementation available too as a Ruby gem, which is the one used by Diaspora. And I already know several projects which are implementing the Diaspora protocol, so the Federation protocol, in PHP, in Go, in Python. So I don't think we actually have a problem there at the moment, at least. I never heard of people who want to extend the protocol and not telling us or doing that on the side. I don't know if I answered you, but
yes. If there's a bit of control on what can be done by a third party that is interested and willing to contribute some code, a minimum level of control, so we don't get incompatible versions spawning here and there. That to me is important for the coherence of the project.
Well, at the moment, that's also because Diaspora has most of the users. So if someone is doing something which is not compatible with Diaspora itself, like, it will be practically useless. So I don't know if someone will do that.
Yeah, we've seen Microsoft doing that embrace and extend thing a number of times, where the base layer is compatible, but there are special functionalities that require functions that are only compatible with Internet Explorer or this or that. So it works, but then the fragmentation of the project is bearing on its viability. That's a problem.
I have two questions, and the first one's really easy, which is, Fla, what would you recommend if I'm going to put a URL for people to be introduced to Diaspora? Because there's a problem of what pod am I going to be on? But what is the general? Is it still the Join Diaspora, or is it something else in English?
There is no, yeah.
No, is it? What about the foundation? Does that have a front page? I can never remember because I'm on so many pods. I don't recall now. Is the Diaspora Foundation, is that a good destination?
Diaspora Foundation is the official website. So if you want to link to the project, yeah, you should do that. diasporafoundation.org.
Let me try to get that happening. And my other question, and I'll do this while you're answering this next question, and then we have Jay. My question was, how different, in your experience, do you find differences in the way pods are administered? So, in other words, are people opting to disconnect? Let's face it, on Mastodon, for example, there are very porn-friendly instances, and political and so on. There are all these different areas. Is that the case with Diaspora in the Federation? And are there many differences in the way admins have set up their pods?
Yeah, I was actually very surprised to see how Mastodon servers were quickly, because I followed the project from the beginning. I really like it. But yeah, I don't know why, how to say that in English. The Mastodon servers specialized themselves, sort of. Is that the good word? Maybe specialized. Yeah.
In other words, they're based on themes, and so for the moment, you're saying that Diaspora doesn't have that aspect. Every time the word aspect comes up, I think of aspect, but yeah, it doesn't have that characteristic.
I think it's mainly come down to only one feature, the local timeline. That doesn't exist in Diaspora, and we don't want it to exist. Like, I don't see why, if I am a gmail.com user, I should only talk about Google. And, like the servers, in my opinion, I don't see the servers influence the content posted on it. At least it's not the goal of Diaspora. It's not the way we are seeing the things. So nothing in the software itself encourage users to be specified. So no, there is some server which have different rules. So for example, no pornography, but they are not customized and focused only on one point.
Okay, but suppose somebody doesn't want political, or doesn't want pornography, or doesn't want something, whatever. Maybe they don't want people to talk about TRS 80s, which is what I had in 1980. Are there instances, first of all, can they not federate with certain other, I mean, that's really what Mastodon does, is I think the admin can say, okay, I'm not going to be connected to this one instance. Can you do that even with Diaspora?
The software itself doesn't allow you to do that. Not easily. I mean, you could easily go in IP tables in your server and say, I don't want that IP to send me anything. So of course you can block someone to talk to you, but that's not the point of view we have, and we don't want to encourage that. So it's not a feature of Diaspora, but I think it's a good thing. Like,
absolutely.
Sorry,
okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
No, I wasn't sure you were finished. I was going to ask Jay. He has another question.
Great. Thank you, Randy. So my question is, are there any business models behind this? So I think we've talked about bug bounties and bounties, a bounty mechanism in the past, but is there anything else that's built in or on the horizon for the project that might provide funding and, incentive, development incentive and so forth?
In my opinion, we again have to do the difference between the developers and the hosters. So if you're an administrator, a pod administrator, then you can have your own business model. For example, some pod you need to pay to register on some pods. So that can be a business model. But we could theoretically do that, like do an official pod where you need to pay to join and use the money to pay developers to work on the project. Maybe that could be a business model, but we are not doing things like that at the moment because nobody really stepped up saying we want to work full-time at Diaspora until now. So maybe Hank planned to do that, so maybe you want to talk about it. But about the business model itself, there could be several business models around Diaspora. We didn't set any at the moment because we are more like, we are doing it mostly for fun, yeah. Like we like to do that. It's a really cool project, but at the moment, all the core team members already have a full-time job, so we are not planning. I mean, if we have a little bit more money, we will certainly do not change anything. Well, if we find 1 billion, I don't know, maybe. But yeah, that's a scale.
Yeah, and I've talked about I haven't thought of a development model around Diaspora. The project actually came out of that sort of a history back in the very, very early days. Unfortunately, in the modern era, if you're going to go after venture capital, they want to see very high rates of return. They want to see how you're going to monetize that. And the social media means of monetization that everyone keeps pushing for are all the ads and big data mining and all the things that are the antithesis of what the Diaspora project is and the Fediverse software in general is. And it is a common problem throughout all of the federated platforms, have how to bootstrap the development. There's actually, I think, one of the talks at FOSDEM and the distributed or the decentralized web session is about that. Because it's, again, as you pointed out, I think Google has more buildings for their Google Plus project than there are developers on Mastodon or on Diaspora. And so just the sheer volume of contributors who are doing that full time versus as part time, that all has to be addressed. Me personally, again, I'm fortunate enough that I have the ability to contribute to open source as my primary professional activity. But I'm not doing that for compensation in any way, nor do I plan to for the foreseeable future. But again, that's unfortunately I haven't worked out how do we monetize that in a way that isn't the antithesis of what the entire reason for building these projects are in the first place.
Yeah, it's tough.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sorry, Randy. I'm not advocating some sort of conventional, business model or revenue model and so forth. It's just a point of consideration whenever I'm looking at, spending my time to learn and use a particular platform or protocol. There's an investment that's pretty precious to me in terms of my time and attention and energy. And I just want to make sure that the project is going to grow and, have staying power over the long term. So that's really the crux of the question. It's not an advocation of, conventional business models by any means.
I was just going to mention that, speaking of business models, that you can post bounties for features you want. And actually, it's my understanding that you can just do a general bounty contribution. I may be wrong about that. Somewhere there's probably donate buttons. I'm very big on donating for stuff that I use. If I get freeware, apps, for example, and I use them 2 times and I don't care for them, I don't. But if you take something like VLC LAN, which by the way is French, right?
Yeah.
VLC, terrific. It's one of the top projects. I mean, those folks, it's incredible how good that is. And I've donated at least once, probably multiple times. And on the phone, free apps on Android, for example, if I've got something that works, I like to go donate if there's a possibility. And I don't know how many pods I've donated on for, because I'm on 4 or 5 now. So I've tried to push money out into the places that ask for them. I'm trying to remember on the one I'm on now, the main one, Diaspora. For the moment, they've said that they don't want donations, so nobody has donated anything. But there's others where I'm trying to think of whether it's now Join Diaspora or diasp.org, or maybe both of them that have a really pretty flagrant donate thing that comes up, and that's fine. I think that's great because it's better than seeing a bunch of ads. And let's face it, just to finish this part of business models, Jay, ads are dead. They're not working. Banners are not working. Ads aren't working. There's no money in that anymore. I know it's podcasters use them because they get money from them, but it's rare that anything's worth it unless somebody's got a huge audience. So anyway, Fly, you wanted to say something. I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I was going your way. In the ideal world, I mean, that is my opinion. I don't want to speak for other contributors to Diaspora. I don't know. But in my opinion, pods and hosters get some money from users. And that's what we do. I'm also a member of Framasoft, so the French association, and I do run the framasphere.org Diaspora pod. And all the services hosted by Framasoft are worth like 300,000 each year in donation. Users are giving us 300,000 euro each year. And in the ideal world, we as an association are using a lot of services, are hosting a lot of applications. We get money from user because we are doing that, and we improve the software we are using. We had to because we are improving performances, we are solving bugs, and then all these small improvements are going upstream to all the free software we are using. And so I can see something like that where the money doesn't go to some kind of Diaspora Foundation, which will be kind of the master of puppets. I don't want that. I think like every users, every administrator of Diaspora have his own I don't know, need. Someone needs different features, someone wants something, someone else wants something else. And if the money comes from the donator, or if the person is skilled enough, then he will build the new feature, and then the feature will be proposed upstream and will be available to everybody because it's free software. So I don't see the money needed to go to reach the foundation, to have an official foundation. I feel that users can be spread all around the world and decentralized like the software is, and give money to the administrator, and maybe the administrator will improve the software. And so you have something pretty similar to Linux. Like Linux itself doesn't have a lot of money, but Google is using it, Red Hat is using it, IBM is using it, everybody is using it. And though they are earning money because of Linux, and then they are contributing back to Linux, and the whole operating system is going better each day. So maybe something similar could work for Diaspora.
That's actually a very good point. By the way, I've got the link to an introduction. This won't tell you what pod to join. There are two problems with any software like this, by the way: discoverability and finding your, in other words, being discovered by people you don't know. And that's done by tags on Diaspora. So it's once you get used to, funny thing about tags is that on some platforms, they're ugly and not really very useful. And plus, and on other platforms, they're like Twitter or does Facebook have? I don't even know. But on Diaspora, that's very important to use tags, to have them in your profile and to use them in every post. And I have to keep slapping myself to do that. But the other problem is, as you mentioned, Fla, finding your friends. And I have to say that personally, I think it's a mistake to go from one platform to another and try to find the same friends. Either you drag them with you somehow, or in which we did on Diaspora, by the way, when it first came out in 2010, right? It went public beta, I think. I brought people like Leif Madsen. Everybody who's listening to this probably knows who he is. He wrote the book on Asterisk. And a lot of people, Ule, and we were all on it for 8 years, for these past 8 years. And I have checked in once a year like everybody else. And it's only in the last few months. In fact, it was since the Google announcement that I just happened to see that Pluspora announcement, and I went over there. And since then, I've tried other pods. And I did join Framasphere today, by the way. So I don't know if it's useful to be on 5 pods, but we'll see. I do speak French and write French, so maybe.
As an English speaker, I actually started using a lot of the Framasoft services, some of the document sharing and some of the other things. They have a very interesting platform that people can check out as a good alternative to Google, your standard Google ecosystem.
The French are actually very, very good at free software. As I mentioned, VLC, but there's a couple of other. Wait a minute, Michael, if you're listening, I see you got the Diaspora slide up, but I think VMix is also a French. Is it, or is it just that the fan, does that come out of France?
VMix?
I was muted. No, VMix is Australian, but there is one of the leading users in Europe is in Bordeaux.
Right.
So
yes, we have to arrange a meeting pretty soon because I'm in Bordeaux too. By the way, Fly, you might want to come to Berlin at some point, especially for Camellia World, because it's a terrific place. We'd love to meet you. And it's an open, by the way, it's free, isn't it? Camellia World? I think it's free. I'm not sure about that, but you know, there'll be meetings in the evenings, and Berlin from France on, what's the name of the thing with the orange logo? Whatever. EasyJet. Very simple flight in. So it's a terrific place. I don't know if you've ever been to Berlin, but it's a great place. It'd be nice to meet you there. Anybody else have any questions for Fla, who's the most authoritative person on the panel at the moment on Diaspora, and otherwise just on distribution and so on? Corrado, I see you unmuted, so you may have one.
Not exactly. It was a consideration that I have, but it literally flew out of my head at the moment. So I'll come back as soon as it comes back to me.
Okay, we have a huge audience on YouTube's live. So if you saw any questions on the chat or any comments, you'll let me know, I hope. Did you find the chat thing?
Yes, I did.
It's rare that anybody's on that anyway.
Yeah.
The problem with IRC is that since they've had to register, Fly, I don't know if you know this, you've probably been registered like me for a long time on IRC, but you know that now you have to register. You used to be able to go on anonymously, and they had a big spam problem.
Yeah, Freenode.
Okay, you remember that, Freenode, a couple of months ago, and now its registration is mandatory. So it cut the traffic. It's just you, me, Michael, and a couple of other people at the moment, and some of the people who are oh, wait a minute. Leif Madsen, who I mentioned earlier, is on, but he's probably not listening. So anyway, registration is a problem. And oh, that's it. Corrado.
Yeah, I got the consideration back regarding money and monetizing Diaspora. I think it's not probably the right platform to do any kind of monetization. And the spirit I see from users and developers and pod admins is rather to give and get something back on the realm of freedom, freedom from deep learning and tracking and all the things that with Google, Facebook, Twitter, we have become the product.
Yeah.
So just not being part of that flawed ecosystem is an advantage, even economically for you, because you're not exploited. So I know I'm going to a socioeconomic tangent here, as I often do, but not being the product is one of the major advantages. And so dedicating some time to get that freedom and to get that yourself back is a good trade-off.
I agree 100% on that. Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't think money is a problem. I think that money is a minimal consideration. It's good that people are rewarded for it, but I think that another way to look at it would be making the contacts for example, programming. If you're a freelance programmer, for example, and you connect with people on Diaspora, you're connecting with people all over the world. I myself have hired, when we had a business, I hired 2 people based on watching them on what was social media at the time, which was Usenet. You watch how people react to other people, and you look at their knowledge, but you also look at how they treat people. Exactly. And I found 2 great subcontractors. In one case, it was a friend of someone who I knew well. Again, Leif Madsen from the Asterisk days. Or you would get on IRC with the Asterisk people, the Asterisk devs, and you would see how they dealt with problems. And so it's a great way to recruit help. And it's a great way to get work if you're looking for work as an independent programmer or a communicator or any job, really. Looking for podcast guests, I don't know, whatever you're looking for illustrators. Look at the photographers that are on all of these networks. Maybe you need somebody for some reason, or you need photos, I mean, and that's all another advantage. So in fact, it's more of a barter and service thing than it would be a monetary thing. But of course, I like to see people rewarded for their work. So hopefully other people will donate or give bounties. Any other questions or comments from anybody who's listening?
Yeah, this is, I'd just like to make a comment about, the governance and the monetization model that we're talking about. And let's take Linux, for example. There is a difference with the Linux community in that two differences. One is you had Red Hat that successfully built a business model that was provided incentive to support the protocol, well, the platform and the language and all that. And 2, you had a benevolent dictator in Linux that people looked at to make a call on certain directions the project went in. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because I'm definitely a fan of decentralization. I'm just bringing up a few other points that are problematic in the entire decentralization realm for scaling, for community direction and so forth. So I love Diaspora and the intention and all that. The point of the questions more is for us to open up a conversation and brainstorm about how could this project have additional fuel, let's say, and momentum. So that's the point of the question.
Yeah, like some businesses and some business models can be franchised and replicated throughout. Others are not shaped to be replicated because they are made around the specific knowledge of a person. So it's not possible to replicate. There are some business models that are that can be replicated, and if Diaspora can be replicated in that way, in the same fashion as a business can be franchised, it will grow organically and it will grow naturally, I think.
Okay, I was distracted trying to type something in IRC. We're coming up to the hour here, so there are no further questions, but I wanted to mention a couple of things. First of all, Eugène, who created Mastodon alone, I think, and now has maybe some people, certainly there are other people working on it, but I wanted to mention that he's everywhere. When I turn on Mastodon, when I go to the page, I don't know, the guy doesn't sleep, first of all. By the way, we had him on VUC last year, and he's a brilliant young guy. But the point is, anyway, he's constantly posting, and not about the technical aspects generally, but just about his life. He's a super character. But the point is that he's definitely the face, just like Linus is the face of Linux, or at least was. Yeah, I should probably put the link there. So it's interesting because I think that he's literally ubiquitous. And I don't know the French word for ubiquitous, but il est partout. So he serves a certain outreach function too. Hank, do you know what I'm talking about? Because you're interested in outreach, right? Do you know Eugène, or were you asking because you never heard of the guy?
Oh, I've heard of him. My first introduction to him actually, and what got me into Mastodon, I think actually setting up an account was he was on a podcast called Changelog, and yeah, it was very good. And yeah, he has definitely, he's actually posted about how little he sleeps. I think that's a lament though, not a bragging thing. He just has a lot going on. There's a conference going on right now where they're talking about some secure protocol stuff. He's been tooting about that on Mastodon as well. And then in that there was an article in Medium that sorry, I can't remember the name of the person who wrote that. Sean's blog. Yeah, we distribute or we federate or something like that. His Medium post, where he actually talks about the fact that he's tried to emphasize outreach and some community stuff and marketing and those sorts of things this year, more than just doing the straight up coding stuff. And I think you're seeing the byproducts of the fact that he's decided to concentrate his energies in that direction.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. And Fla, actually, you're the only person who was able to respond positively to the invitation to join us today. And by the way, I thank you very much. We're almost done here. Thank you very, very much for joining us. But you are kind of the human face of this right now. And you're more in the world, the monde francophone. So it's a little bit different. You're out there, but you maybe don't feel so confident in putting out long papers in English and so on. I guess Discourse, which would be discourse.diasporafoundation.org, is the place to go to talk to people on it. It's not hugely busy, but it is there, and I've talked to a few people there, but that's how I discovered you. And again, appreciate very much your participation. I would like to see more publicity for Diaspora because I think it's really an excellent thing. And right now it has an image in the public mind of, because it doesn't compare to MeWe or Google Plus or all these really slick funded things, which, by the way, I like because that's good. But a lot of people are a little leery of that kind of thing. So hopefully things will move along. And there's no real reason why Diaspora needs to be a Facebook killer or any killer of anything. It just is what it is. I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't mention that, but when the founders launched Diaspora, it has been seen as a Facebook killer. Diaspora,
that was the press, though. That was the media that's used that, right?
Yeah, but the point was to build an alternative to Facebook, because it's funny because it was in 2010. And we were already aware that Facebook was evil. And it was before Prism. I don't know. Yeah, Prism is that saying like this? The NSA program.
Yeah, Prism, yeah.
Prism. So it was before Prism. It was before Edward Snowden,
Right.
And it was already clear to a lot of people that a huge amount of data in the same place wasn't a good thing. So the goal of Diaspora today is not to kill Facebook. I will not say to someone, leave Facebook, it's bad for you. I think it, but I do not give orders to people. And the idea is like, we are building an alternative. And so if someone is asking, Ola, I'm afraid about what I'm reading about Facebook, and I want to leave it, what can I do? I will have something to answer. I can say, there is this software, I'm working on it with several other people, and we think that it's not perfect. It will not match Facebook perfectly. It's not a replacement, but you can use it now. It works for years, and you'll find a lot of people on it, and maybe it will fit your needs. So,
I think that's true. Here's the Mastodon edition, by the way. That's a YouTube thing, so there's a big triangle in the middle. And that was 661. So that was September 1st, 2017. Wow, that's getting back there. The other thing is that there's the URL for that. Somebody wanted to say something? I heard
yeah, just one thing about an option to get Diaspora to spread faster, as we do with the VUC with Mastodon, that we rent for a few quid a month an instance. It would be an interesting part of the business model if someone could start creating pods and running pods in the cloud for rent for a very small fee. That there's a space for that, in my opinion. So that could be a revenue stream.
Thanks for mentioning that, because I was about to, and then I forgot about it. Yeah, I asked the guy who does our because Fla, we pay $5 a month or €5 a month for the Mastodon. It's up to 100 users. You know, we don't expect more than we have about 22 people now, and that's fine. And if you could do a pod, I think that the idea is maybe not to have more and more pods, but if you wanted a special interest pod, at least that was relationships like the VUC, like this thing that we've been doing for 12 years, it would be wonderful to be. I would love to have. I would pay €5 more if somebody would host this thing in the cloud. But that hosting isn't just the hosting; it's also all the updates all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that person on our Mastodon instance, I don't ever do anything. They've got the certificate, which is nothing today anyway, the TLS. But the guy does everything, and he was on that edition, by the way, in case anybody wants to know who that is, Hugo, on the Mastodon VUC. He was also part of that. But the point is, that'd be great. I would love if somebody would do that. So if anybody's listening who's capable of it, Hank, no, I don't know. If somebody wants to go to DigitalOcean and do, yeah, unfortunately, this is more work and hours of work. I don't know how he does this, but apparently he wasn't interested in doing for Diaspora because it's maybe more complicated or has different requirements from Mastodon. Anyway, thanks again, Fla. I really appreciate it. We're going to close out unless anybody has any other business. Anyone?
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm just part of it, just not me. So yeah, well, if you have any questions about Diaspora, you can always ping and ask. Usually that's also the point. The community is doing an amazing job to answer questions. So if you post a public message on Diaspora with the question hashtag and the Diaspora hashtag, if that's about Diaspora, you will probably have some answers pretty quickly. So that's, in my opinion, that's the best support system. Like the users themselves, they are helping each other. So, of course, I'm part of the users, so I will be able to answer too.
Well, I think it's a fantastic project. Thanks again. And thanks to everybody who follows Visions Under Construction. Thanks for your visions. I like people with vision. And with that, we're going to close off the public part. Public parts. Hey, private parts, public parts. What's his name? Jeff, the professor, already did that. Here we go. We're going to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.